All right. Hello, everyone. We just wait for a couple more minutes for more people to join in, and then we get started. Right, we'll just get started in a minute. I hope all of you can hear me. Okay, let's begin. Very good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar titled Coding for English Language Learners. My name is Karan Vaswani, and I work as the Professional Development Lead in Asia for BSD Education. So just what are we going to be looking at today? So I'll do a small introduction to BSD Education in case this is your first time joining us. We'll talk a little bit about how coding is like any other language. We'll also be sharing some strategies, some language strategies for learning code. And we'll also show you some sample projects that BSD has created to facilitate the learning of code. And finally, at the end, we'll open for some questions and answers as well. So I'm also joined by my colleague, Beth, who will from time to time be sharing some links with you in the chat. So please do keep an eye on the chat as you will get some more information from there too. All right, so a little bit about me. As I said, I work as the professional development lead in Asia for BSD Education. So my major role is to actually train and give confidence to teachers to actually bring digital skills into their classrooms with BSD. So I work with teachers all around Asia Pacific to help them integrate BSD into their classrooms. And our training basically involves, curriculum familiarization, skill building, as well as how to use our platform. The other thing that I do is I also manage all of our enrichment programs, so our after school programs, our summer camps and holiday camps that we run for different students online and in person. I also have a team of instructors that I work with and train them to deliver the programs at different schools or online as well. And from time to time, I also work with my own students to deliver classes in web, app, and game development as well. A little bit about us before we jump into the topic. So BSD Education is an international team of educators and technologists that strive to enable and empower teachers to bring real world technology education using digital skills such as coding, digital artifacts, digital citizenship, and digital design to every classroom. So we provide a curriculum that can be delivered asynchronously or synchronously, um, an easy to use platform that provides live data, and training and support, which consists of 3 hours and 90-minute professional development sessions, one-to-one coaching sessions, on-demand support, and monthly webinars like this. So all of this combined gives us a real impact. So talking a little bit about what we teach. So what we teach, we divide into hard skills, soft skills, and values. So BSD is not just for students that will go into computer science. It's for all students that will work with technology and digital skills in their future, which all students are currently doing so. And learning digital skills is as important as literacy or numeracy. So at BSD, we focus on 3 areas. So the hard skills is the first thing we focus on. So we are a coding and programming platform, but we're also sure to include data analysis, interpretation, and content creation as well. So in terms of the soft skills, because our projects are all real world, students are able to communicate, collaborate, and think critically about projects that they believe in. And our values, so you can see curiosity, adaptability, resilience, and empathy. These are the values that we believe will give students the best chance for success in this digital future. If you want to know more about our values, please check out our YouTube channel for a recent webinar that actually described all of our values in detail. So coding is like any other language. So sometimes when we say the word coding, it can set off alarms for certain people, say, oh, this is quite difficult. It sounds quite difficult. But actually, it's not. It's just like learning any other new language. So what is coding? Coding is how we talk to computers to tell them what to do. It's basically giving a set of instructions to accomplish a particular task. So we use coding languages to build things like websites and games, sometimes apps as well. And the three coding languages that we focus on at BSD is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So these are the three languages that power the web and find wide variety of applications. So you can use these languages to build websites, web pages, apps, games. And in terms of what each language does, HTML helps to deliver all the content, so all the text, all the images, as well as the structure of the page. The CSS is what makes your page look beautiful. So the reason like you love using certain websites is because how beautifully it's designed, and that's all done using CSS coding. And finally, JavaScript is what helps to make a website interactive. So HTML and CSS can only build static pages, whereas JavaScript makes things a bit more dynamic and interactive. So for example, when you're playing games, or if you're building a game where you move a player by hitting the keyboard, all of those commands are coded in JavaScript. So you can see here that you see a few words, so cat, dog, car, and I'm sure these are all words that all of you recognize. So in language learning and reading, people usually begin to recognize words by repetition, and some words even become instantly recognizable. So I'm sure that the words displayed here are quite recognizable to all of you. So, and what this does is this starts to create images in your mind, and you can possibly even start to piece together a story of some kind just by looking at these words. Right? Now, on the other hand, let's look at some new words, right? So the first question ask you is, do you immediately recognize these words? Now, if you've had some coding experience with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you might recognize these words, but otherwise, probably not. You may be able to make some sense of the letters, but not entirely the meanings of the words. And that's okay, because when you start learning to code, you will be introduced to certain new words. And that's very similar to when you learn a new language. You're introduced to new words that you begin to learn the meaning of, or you begin to decode the meaning of as well. So talking about phonics versus whole languages, these are the two main types of language and reading strategies for learning how to read a new language. So phonics is basically about decoding words by sounding out each letter and learning about letter groupings. Whereas whole language learning is a complete system of making meaning with words functioning in relation to each other in context. Now, you might wonder which is more appropriate for learning to code. At BSD, we have a mixed approach to learning code, which includes learning code in a context, as well as individual vocabulary building with a feature called our glossary cards, which I will show you a bit later in this presentation. So we need certain skills to be able to, reading and writing code are very distinct skills. And according to research conducted at the University of Washington, USA, there are two very different skills involved in reading versus writing code. So reading code is about deciphering and comprehending code patterns and syntax relationships. Writing code is being able to solve problems and produce working artifacts. And the research has shown that learning to code first helps to better understand how to actually write code. And for more details on that research, my colleague Beth will be able to share with all of you a link that provides more details on these skills of reading and writing code as well. So Beth, if you can just share that when you have a moment. So if you have a look at this code, so just spend a couple of minutes, and are you able to decipher this code, right? Let us know what you think. So have a look at this code. What is this code trying to do? Even if you've never done code before, have a look at it and see if you're able to figure it out. Leave some responses on the chat. Yep, in a restaurant. Yeah, this is taking place in a restaurant. That's correct. Right, so what's happening in this code is it's a simulation for what happens in a restaurant or giving an order in a restaurant. So the user is basically asked what they would like to eat, and it is stored inside something called a variable called food. And then we also ask what toppings they would like with that food, and we're able to print that the food with the chosen toppings is on its way, along with the drinks that they would like to order. Now, this code that you see here is written in a language called Hedi that was designed to help English language learners to learn coding fundamentals. So Hedi uses a gradual approach of learning syntax with a focus on developing a reading comprehension of code. So the Hedi language and learning materials are actually free to use. So in case you did enjoy deciphering that activity or deciphering this code and you want to learn more about how Hedi works, my colleague Beth will be able to share another link with you about how Hedy works. Right? So the same researchers that develop Hedy have done further research to show that having students read aloud code increases their ability to actually comprehend code. So rather than them reading it just in their mind, reading it silently, reading it aloud actually shows that they have increased ability to comprehend their code. And again, for more details on that research, Beth will be sharing another link with all of you. Okay, so again, the same researchers that developed Hedy also looked to see which conditions were best for learning to code. And they found that groups of students who read explanations of code while reading aloud perform better with code comprehension. They conducted a study where 3 groups of students tried different ways to learn code. And the students who didn't have access to the explanations actually performed worse. So again, there's a video that actually explains all of this, which is on YouTube, which Beth will be able to share the link. Okay, so let's go into some language strategies for learning code. So what you can see here is some code from one of our projects called the Poem projects. And if you read this code aloud and you compare it with the output, I'm wondering if any of you can figure out what the BR piece of code actually does. So if you look at the code and then you compare it with the output that's at the bottom, what do you think the BR actually does? So feel free to read it and let us know what you think the BR actually does.
It basically shifts the line to the next line.
Yeah, yeah. So as we discussed, the BR that you see here, where you see a BR everywhere on the code, so you see it here, here, here. So you notice that every time there's a BR, it forces the text into the next line. So it basically inserts a line break. So I'm sure quite a few are familiar with inserting line breaks even in your documents. So using this piece of code there helps to insert the line breaks. Okay, so to help with the learning of code, BSD Education actually provides scaffolded learning through our guided projects. So our guided projects take students through steps with instructions that focus on one concept at a time. And you can see here, learning is supported with interactive glossary cards that students can use to recall key terms, vocabulary, and syntax. So the idea with BSD when you work on BSD projects is not for students to memorize the syntax. It's more for them to be able to apply the syntax in order for them to build out their project. So as a result, we provide these glossary cards for reinforcement of key terms, vocabulary, and syntax. So what does our glossary look like? So for example, if we wanted to know about what is the hex color code. Now we use hex color codes when we're not, we want a particular shade of blue, orange, yellow, red, whatever color. So we have a hex code or a hexadecimal code that represents that. So this glossary card actually explains what a hex color code is, how is that syntax actually used in the code, and then finally you can see it in action and also tweak it before you implement it on your real code as well. So all of our glossaries provide a what is it syntax and see it in action slides for better understanding. And these glossary cards are available for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript languages too. So you can see here that we also show different worked examples. So we can show how the code is added, and students are also given editable areas to fill out what needs to be done. So you can see that we provide very, very clear instructions on what to do in each objective. So if you see here on CSS line 13, it's asking us to set the background color of the web page to a color of your choice. So the student would then have a look at the glossary card for the hex code, understand how to use the background color property, and then combine them together to add the required syntax. And what our system also does is it's able to check whether the syntax entered by the student is actually correct or not. And if it's not correct, it shows them an error message, which then gets students to actually debug before they're able to move on to the next step. So I'm going to show you some of our sample projects that we have done. And if you have a look here, this is a multi-page website that some of our students had built. And we teach students to design with empathy. So listening to what other people need and want is an essential part of the design process. And from there, students decided to build a community organization website using the BSD platform. And these were students who didn't have any coding experience before. They were purely students who were just familiar with English and were able to kind of come up with this website in just a few hours. So again, here's a sample of a personal web page. And in these lessons, we also include things about why privacy is important, privacy rules to keep you safe, and the difference between private and personal information. And just to show you what the full website looks like, Beth can actually share a link of this particular project with all of you to see. So please feel free to click on the link to have a look at the project. So the link that Beth actually sent us, every student who works with BSD can actually share their projects with their friends, families, and teachers. And teachers can use those links to even assess the student work as well. So in terms of, this kind of brings me to the end of the main topic, which was the coding for English language learners and some of the strategies that we adopted in terms of teaching code to English language learners. But we just want to leave all of you today with 7 free projects in learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We do have the Hour of Code week coming up, so you could actually try this in your classrooms using this particular link, app.bsdeducation/free. You could also scan the QR code, and if you have any questions on how to use this in your classroom, you can even contact my colleague Brent at bh@bsd.education. And here's a sample of some of our free projects in action. So you can see that you have a project on jokes and riddles, my favorite website, the people who inspire me, and a trivia game maker. And the focus for this year is the AI webcam image classifier. So it actually teaches you how to use the webcam to classify different images into different categories. So we'd love your feedback on this session. So again, there will be a link sent to you to fill out this feedback. So let us know what you thought of this session. Let us know what you'd like to see as well in the next few sessions too. Thank you very much for listening today so patiently. And I'd like to just kind of stop for questions at this time. Does anyone have any questions or comments that they'd like to share? Right? Any questions on any of our BSD projects or any of the strategies that we adopted? Any questions on how teachers are trained? Well, let's wait a couple of minutes more to see if anyone has any questions. If not, we can just wind up. Okay, if there are no questions, then we will wind up here for today. Thank you all so much for joining today's session, and we look forward to seeing you again next week and the week after for our next sessions as well. Thank you very much and have a great day.